Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today for the BA MIA information session. I want to briefly mention that this info session will be recorded. So while we do encourage you to turn on your cameras so we can see your faces, and at the end, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself. But for now, if you feel like you want to remain anonymous, by all means, that's totally okay. But we ask that you please do not share any personally identifiable information. So like your PIDs or your emails. And if you cannot stay for the entire duration of this info session, or if you have friends who maybe had class and aren't able to attend today, please send an email to GPS-UG programs at UCSD, and we can send you the recording. I will put that email in the chat. So without further ado, let's get started. We're going to start off with some brief introductions. My name is Julia Ng. I am the primary advisor for the joint degree programs at GPS. So I oversee those who are interested in applying for the BA-MIA program like yourselves, as well as helping guide you throughout your undergraduate and graduate requirements once you've been accepted into the program. I'm also joined by Dr. Nancy Gilson, who is the Director of Degree Programs at GPS and ISP, as well as two of our newer international studies advisors who you might already know, Kaylee Fisher and Matthew Lynn. Corey was not able to attend today as he's helping take care of any other ISP responsibilities, but I will like to pass it off to my colleagues and let them introduce themselves if they'd like.
Matthew, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and get started. Hey, everyone. I'm Matthew. I'm, as Julia said, one of the academic advisors for the International Studies program. I graduated back in 2019 from UC San Diego as a social psychology major, and I ended up working at University of San Diego for a bit. And I worked with GPS as a temporary services, and now I'm fully on the team as an academic advisor. Yeah, welcome, everyone. Hopefully you learned some cool stuff.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kaylee Fisher. I am one of the newest academic advisors and program coordinators here for the International Studies program. My pronouns are she, hers. As I was saying, I'm a little bit newer here. I've been at ISP for 5 months. Besides academic advising, I work on the social media distributions for the department as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Gilson, and I'm the director of the programs at both the graduate school and also for international studies. I've been associated with ISP for a lot of years, taught INTL 101 and 190 several times over the years, and have now, run the programs for the last 11. So I want to welcome you all. Thank you for your interest. And I'm going to be managing the chat. So if you have questions along the way you want to throw in the chat, I'm happy to answer them. And we'll let Julia do the rest.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so as Dr. Nancy said, or Dr. Gilson said, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you want to hold on to them till the very end, we'll give you some time to unmute and ask. And if your question is not answered right away, it might mean that we're going to answer it somewhere later on in the presentation. And so we definitely want to give you enough time to answer or to ask any questions so that you feel comfortable in where you are in applying for this program and all the information you need to know for the program. And so moving on. So what is the BA-MIA program? So the BA-MIA program is a combined program with the curriculum of ISP, or where the curriculum of ISP and the curriculum of GPS go very hand in hand. GPS curriculum builds on the interdisciplinary core of the ISP coursework that you are already working on or will soon be working on, and then gives you a more hands-on experience and the training you need to complete your master's and move forward into the job force. So ISP was originally founded with the idea of being very cross-disciplinary with economics, politics, with humanities, and those of you who are in business. The curriculum for GPS was founded now over 30 years ago with the same inputs. where instead of just humanities, we add different specifications and including language and focusing on a particular region alongside the management, economics, and political science courses you might be in. So the origin of the program was from faculty in GPS who thought that this was a very good way for you all as undergraduate students to get a master's degree with only one additional year on top of it instead of the 2 years traditional grad program, in a program that's built on what you're already learning as an undergraduate. So it's designed for those of you who are really interested in international affairs, international economics, management, development, and international politics. So whether or not you want to go into the public or private sectors when it comes to working later on after you graduate, we have students who go in all different directions in terms of employment after they graduate. So in some ways, this program is a natural next step for a lot of you as international studies students. And so in this program, you'll be earning your Bachelor of Arts degree with your ISP, specialized in the track that you're in, as well as your Master in International Affairs with only one additional year of coursework. So here is a nice graphic that one of my colleagues have made, and kind of demonstrates the way that the BA-MIA joint degree program works. So for most of you, you will be applying during the spring of your junior year. Applications are due in April and admissions decisions will be announced around sometime in May. And so you will begin your graduate work, as you can see, in the light blue / dark blue shade. I know that the GIF moves really fast, but you would begin your graduate work in your senior year. So if you're a freshman entry student, that's your 4th year typically, or if you're a transfer student, that'll be in your 2nd year after you entered UCSD. So you're beginning the master's program by taking the GPS core while also finishing the requirements for your undergraduate major. So you're working on both in that first year in the program. So you're still an undergraduate, you're not quite a graduate standing student yet. But then once you complete your first year, then your 2nd year will be fully matriculated into graduate standing. And then after that year, you'll be graduated with your master's in international affairs. So the thing to understand about this whole concept is that it is the exact same curriculum of the 2 years MIA program, if you were to be doing the traditional 2 years. So you will be earning your master's in the same 2 years, but you would only have 1 year on top of your traditional 4 years or 2 years as a freshman or a transfer. So other people are applying to the MIA program coming in after maybe having been out of college for a while, or they haven't gone to UCSD, so they don't know the ISP curriculum as well as you know, and not being an international studies major and whatnot. So this graphic shows you that it really is only 1 additional year. And when you come in through advising to see us, we definitely check your ISP requirements first so that we can see that you will in fact finish your undergraduate degree while being able to fully do the core requirements of the master's degree. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, we'll talk about it a little bit more. So moving on. So GPS is focused mostly on the Asia Pacific region, which includes the United States, Mexico, Latin America, to some extent the Caribbean, East Asia, Southeast Asia in particular. So it really focuses on the politics and economics and business trade relations among these countries. And so here, as the second bullet point says, is that it really leads you to a lot of different professional directions. So we've had a lot of students who have gone into work at a multilateral, work for the UN, for a bilateral, and who are also maybe interested in trade. So despite the fact that GPS does focus on the Asia Pacific, we've had students who have gone to Africa, who have gone to Europe, even South Asia. So although the focus of the school is the Asia Pacific, please don't let that limit you in terms of your interests post-graduation. We have a lot of students who are working climate change, who go into security, or do corporate social responsibility all over the world. So this program really opens up a way for you to begin thinking about what you want to do in the first part of your career. So one question that has come up, I think, when you guys were registering, and it has come up before, is why get a master's degree instead of just a bachelor's degree, if GPS is, in a sense, just building on top of what you already learned in ISP. And so the answer to that is that data shows that master's degrees are the new bachelor's degrees, with a lot more opportunities opening up. Bachelor's degrees are kind of losing their value in a sense. But if a master's degree means you get to go into your first job with a higher salary, it's more targeted towards the particular thing that you're interested in, it allows you to be much more attractive to employers, and the competition out there is looking for a lot of people who have that experience. And with the struggle to get jobs nowadays, it means that having that experience from a master's degree really does a lot for you in getting you to where you want to be. And is almost essential in that fact. So here is a brief overview of the program. The BA-MIA program is only open to IS Econ, IS International Business, and IS Poli-Sci majors. The other tracks do not have the required undergraduate coursework and therefore do not lead to the BA-MIA quite as much as the other three. So if you're not in one of these three main tracks and you think that you do want to be part of the BA-MIA program, then you'll definitely want to meet with me or Dr. Gilson or one of your ISP advisors to talk about how we can switch your track to one of these three tracks. So one of the things that needs to be pointed out is that the BA-MIA tracks for IS Econ, IS International Business, and IS Political Science, they are different than the regular tracks that you're already in. So if you're a junior, for example, and you're thinking about applying this year, you can go to the ISP website and you can look at the requirements specifically on the BA-MIA page and not the regular undergraduate requirements for your track. So you can see kind of where you are in preparedness for applying to the program. And here is a brief overview of the curriculum in general, and this is a very important starting point into understanding what your requirements are if you're applying for the BA-MIA. So for your lower division requirements, as you all should know, ISP has the language requirement of four quarter proficiency, but at GPS that now changes to a 6th quarter proficiency requirement. We'll talk about this a little bit more and how there's a little bit of a difference in terms of this. But besides that, you still have the language requirement. And depending on your track, we are adding a math requirement and either accounting or economics courses. So for your, we'll go into that a little bit more too. And then for your upper division requirements, you have the same international studies core courses, the 3 INTL courses, those don't change. Your primary track. And one of the things to note about the BA-MIA requirements is that you have a little bit more of an extensive secondary set of courses, which we call the secondary track. Right now, you should know you have 3 interdisciplinary courses, but for the secondary tracks for the BA-MIA, you actually have a little bit more coursework. Some of those courses are ones that you will take at GPS, but you need to make note of the fact that you're adding courses to your undergraduate requirements. And then we have the GPS method courses, 2 courses of methodology, and a regional requirement for ISP, as well as another one for GPS. So for GPS, once you're into your final year, you also have a career track specialization, which really allows you to focus and drill down on the subject that you're interested in and want to move forward with. You'll have a capstone project, which is the graduate level of kind of your INTL 190 course, where you'll have the opportunity / requirement, depending on how you think about it, of writing a research paper closely related with one of the faculty members at GPS. And so it is often very important to have a deliverable when you're going on the job market, and people want to see and can quantify what you can do, and you will have a very good example of the kind of work that you're able to do right out of grad school with this capstone. And so here is the language requirement and the regional requirement in more depth. So like I mentioned already, GPS has a 6-quarter language proficiency requirement. So for those of you who are already using an Asia Pacific language, since you have to do 4 quarters for ISP, you only have to add 2 more quarters for GPS. So for those of you who might be doing a non-GPS language, for example, like French, German, you'll have to switch languages because 6-quarter proficiency will require you to start another language once you get into your senior year so that you can finish that 2-year requirement. As long as you have 4 quarters for ISP by the time you graduate with your BA. So that is another caveat. If you need to start a second language, you will need to start that as soon as possible so that you have those 4 quarters under your belt for ISP. And so if you're taking a non-GPS language, please speak with me or an ISP advisor or Nancy about how you'll reach that 6-quarter proficiency by the time you graduate with your master's. It's doable if you need to switch, but it will take some time to figure it out if need be. So for GPS, your language has to match your regional specialization. For ISP, it doesn't. So you could be doing a regional specialization with ISP where your region is Latin America, but your language is Chinese. That's fine and that works. But for GPS, your language and your regional specialization have to match. So the chart here shows you the standard languages that we have at GPS and what region they correlate with. There are others that we do allow for Southeast Asia specifically. If you speak maybe Thai, Vietnamese, we also sometimes allow Spanish. We do allow those for Southeast Asia. You just need to talk to one of us to see how that would fit. This chart is just a great place to start. And so we also have some students who use Hindi as their native language because there are a lot of Hindi speaking communities in Southeast Asia, like Thailand, Singapore, or Malaysia. So we do allow Hindi for Southeast Asia, and that's just one example. So understanding the language and regional requirement, the differences between ISP versus what you have to do for GPS is something that if you have any questions about it, please let us know, and we'll make sure that you're on the right track to finish with your bachelor's and also complete the language and regional requirement for GPS. And then we also do have, if we have a language and it's hard for you to get a proficiency exam through UCSD, we have some at GPS. We have called the equivalency exam, and we do have those upon request in order to fulfill a requirement if you are speaking a native language that we don't necessarily offer at UCSD. So math. All 3 ISP tracks must take either the 10 or 20 calculus series at UCSD. We are fine with you taking the 10 series, as we know the 20 series is more geared towards STEM majors. But why math, do you ask? We all know that the world runs on data. There are very few professions out there that don't require you to be at least a sophisticated consumer of math. So being able to look at data and being able to understand what it claims and does what someone says it does, so that you can tell, like, it tells you what you need to know about the shelf life of a product as it is advertised on a certain way, or you can find the relationship between infant mortality and environmental degradation, or you can read about how the different poverty levels are in Brazil. Being able to interpret and being able to create data sets and have it say what you need it to say in order to be a literate consumer of data, you do have to have some math background, which is why we require you to take either of the math calculus sequences at UCSD. It also doesn't have to be at UCSD. Let me backtrack. If you did take it at a community college, or if you started taking it at a community college, you can also take it at a community college. It does not have to be specific UCSD courses, but we do need you to have the equivalent of the calculus series of what we have as Math 10 A, B, or C, or Math 20 A, B, or C. So if you need to take this, we recommend that you do it as soon as possible. Some of you may have already taken the beginning courses of math. Then you are good to go. And then these are the lower division requirements for the BA/MA program. These are fairly standard for each of the tracks. Again, in some cases, these are the prerequisites for courses that you already have to take. So in particular, the economics courses, the economics department has put prerequisites on almost all of their upper division coursework. And so you will need these in order to take your upper division courses that we'll talk about in a second. IS International Business has always required these lower division requirements for math, and then you have your 2 accounting courses, so that hasn't changed. For political science, because you will have a secondary track course requirement in economics, you will also have to take the lower division econ classes, so you can take that secondary track courses for economics. And so we're adding these lower division courses for you all. And moving forward, a lot of the GPS core classes do require you to have some sort of microeconomics and maybe some macroeconomics. So taking these core classes definitely makes it a little bit easier once you come to GPS. Okay, so the International Studies core courses, this should not be a surprise to you all. You all still are required to take the 3 international core courses if you're doing the BA/MIA. The differences here is that if you are doing the BA/MIA program, we do recommend that you can put off the INTL 190 course into the spring of your senior year. So that is something that you don't have to do prior to applying, so that we can get you on your way of doing your undergraduate coursework that you have left to do. Putting 190 off makes it a little bit more doable in terms of getting your upper division coursework done and getting your primary and secondary track done and doing the INTL 101 and 102 courses first. We can talk about this a little bit more if we have our one-on-one appointments later on, but when you are getting ready to graduate in the spring of your senior year, you only have 2 required core courses then. So it's a good time to have INTL 190 in your schedule so that you have a little bit less stress while doing your core classes, the INTL 190, but also it'll keep you at full-time status. So that is what we recommend, and we can talk about that more on a case-by-case basis if you want to talk about it more. So moving on to the upper division requirements for your primary track. I'm not going to explain all of this to you since you should be already relatively familiar with what you're required to do for your track. I do want to stress that the course requirements for the BA/MIA for all 3 tracks are different than the standard tracks, like I've mentioned before. So you will definitely want to make sure you're looking online, in particular on the BA/MIA requirements, to see what differences those are and match them to what you've already done. And then you can see where you are. If you have any questions about that in particular as well, by all means, you can meet with me, Dr. Gilson, one of your ISP advisors, and we can help you along with that as well. That being said, let me go into more detail about the GPCO classes that you see here on the screen. So these are the GPS core classes that all first-year students are required to take. So that's not specifically BA/MIA, it's all of our MIA students that are in the program. So what you see here is that it does say 8 primary track courses. 5 of these are in relation to your upper division coursework, and under them, the 3 GPCO courses. So in other words, you have 8 primary track courses, but only 5 of them are going to be your undergraduate departments, where if you're political science or econ, you still have that freedom to choose out of those pre-approved lists. For international business, it is those 5 MGT courses. And the other 3 courses are the core that will count towards your 8 primary track courses, but they're the required GPS core. So if you look, for example, at the political science track, GPCO 400, 410, and 412 are all political science courses. The way that GPS does them is not the standard political science courses that you might be used to, but nonetheless, we think of them as political science courses, so we count them towards your major track. Similarly, with economics, you have microeconomics, international accounting, and finance. And these are standard econ courses that we count towards your primary track. For business, you take micro, international economics, and you take a market failures class. Instead of accounting, like all the other tracks take, you take market failures because you've had enough accounting as it's already been required by your major, so we don't want to make things too easy for you. So we find another econ course for you to take. So it says 8 courses for your primary track, but it's only 5 from your major department. These are your undergraduate level classes, and 3 of them are your graduate courses that you'll take in your senior year. Okay, so like I briefly mentioned earlier, you do have a larger set of requirements for your secondary track. And so you all know that you have 3 interdisciplinary requirements for your major track, right? But for the BA/MA, you have 5 in a sense, but we call it the secondary track because you can't necessarily choose any course outside of your primary track. So if you're taking a Viz course, a literature, East Asia course, these are a little bit different because we want you to focus on the cognate field. So if you are in IS political science, your secondary track is economics. If you're IS econ, your secondary track is political science. And if you're international business, your secondary track is political science as well. So you have 2 upper division courses in your secondary track department, and then we give you credit for the other 3 GPCO classes to balance out what's in your secondary track. So again, for IS political science, we give you credit for the 3 GPCO classes that are basically political science. But for here, your secondary track, we give you credit for the 3 econ-based courses that go towards your secondary track for econ. So you have more requirements, but we try and make it possible for you to graduate with your bachelor's degree without adding too much to your course load. Okay. So regional requirement for ISP. This you guys should also still be relatively familiar with. I do want to note one thing here. If you are in international business, your requirement goes from 3 and is now down to 2. And the reason for that is because your coursework is more specified for the primary track, your 5 MGT courses. So it's harder for you to get an additional 3 courses in one area. So we only require you to have 2. But one thing to note is that while it's not absolutely required that your ISP track is, or your regional studies, regional requirement area focus is not Asia Pacific, it is still beneficial for you that if it is. But again, your regional requirement does not have to match your language, and so it does not have to match what you intend on doing at GPS. So if you're already on your way of doing that, specifically and particularly with the language, then it'll be a lot easier for you to stick with that through GPS once you're in the BA/MA program. Okay, so before we move on, are there any questions in the chat or with any of this so far that you guys have questions about? We can address them now. I have one that's directly to me. It says, if I've already satisfied the language requirement in Spanish with the waiver, does that also mean does this also apply to the MIA requirement, or do I need to do anything else? So if you are a native speaker of Spanish and you were able to waive out of your language requirement for ISP through maybe taking, well, either the proficiency exam, or if you're native ability and you've attended high school in Mexico or whatnot, or it was taught in Spanish, the waiver of attending high school outside of the US will carry over. It's a different, you'd still have to petition it. But with the proficiency exam, this, you would actually have to take another step. So this applies to any other language besides Spanish. If you have taken the proficiency exam for your ISP requirement, note that that is only to pass you out of fourth quarter language. And so once you're in the BA MIA program, you will actually need to reschedule another proficiency exam and let the proctor know that you need up to 6 quarter proficiency, and that'll waive you out of the requirement. Okay. So in addition to the coursework that we just talked about, there are 2 quantitative methods courses. We call them QM1 and QM2. And like we mentioned earlier, the world runs on data. So you will take these along with your other core courses in your senior year that count towards your primary and secondary tracks. QM1 is taken in the fall and QM2 is taken in the winter. In QM2 in particular, you'll be learning coding languages of Stata and R. So you'll begin to develop your ability to work with data analysis early on. And from there, GPS has a ton of data classes, if that's what you're really interested in. So we don't require anything past QM2. We do have QM3 and QM4, but those are if you want to continue on with the QM series, they're not required, only QM1 and QM2. So in total, you'll be taking 8 GPS core classes during your senior year, 3 in the fall, 3 in the winter, and 2 in the spring. And so here are the MIA requirements in particular. Once you finish the core at GPS during your first year, in your second year and moving forward, you will have a career track requirement. This is where you get to really begin to specialize in the things that interest you when you're thinking about what you want to do once you leave UCSD, what job do you want, and what are the things that GPS has to offer so that we can get you to where you need to be. These are the 5 that we have: international development and nonprofit management. This is for if you want to work in an NGO or a nonprofit. This is a really good track for you. Any place in the world. We've had a lot of people who have gone abroad for work in places like Africa, India, Vietnam, and so that is a good track for you if you're interested in that. We have international economics, a good field if you see yourself wanting to work on trade policy, or if you want to work in a large industry or maybe consulting. We have international environmental governance, where we have a lot of students working on climate issues and energy in both the nonprofit and public and private sectors. We have international management, where we have students who go into consulting, they work for banks, do market analysis. We have students at Google, Facebook, Qualcomm, and all sorts of those well-known businesses. And lastly, international politics, for people who want to go work for the US government, work for the state of California, or in some cases work abroad in policy areas in your home country or countries that you've always wanted to live in once you graduate. And so with this career track, we have 2 required courses that you'll have to take along with 3 electives. So it's kind of similar to what you're already doing for ISP, just a little bit more specialized and narrow focus. Okay, so then as we said, we have the regional specialization. For GPS in your second year, this is an additional 2 courses that is typically an economics of and a politics of course. So the political institutions of Latin America and the economic policies of Latin America, those would be your two if you're doing Latin America region along with Spanish. And then we have the economics of Southeast Asia, or the politics of Southeast Asia if you're doing Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. So you have your language requirement, which is an adjacent to your regional area. And so if you have a undergraduate degree or minor in Spanish or Chinese studies, this would really help get you to that 6-quarter proficiency for that language for the regional specialization. Okay. So here we have a sample 5-year academic plan for entry level or freshman entry students at UCSD. If you're a transfer student, hold on, we have one for you too. It does look a little bit busy, and you'll probably be able to look at this a lot easier once you're looking at it on your own later on. But this shows you that the program is doable if you came in as a freshman at UCSD. It gives you a good layout of all the requirements from the time you come in and through your last year, through your 4th year and your 5th year as a GPS graduate student. So it kind of shows you kind of the layout of how the classes fit and how you would do it. And so a couple of things to point out is that the summer between your senior year, where you graduate with your bachelor's degree before you matriculate to graduate standing, here, you'll see that you are required to have a summer internship. This is a requirement for all of our students, not just the BA MIAs. We have a great GPS career services team that will help you find an internship. In the case that maybe you have an unpaid internship, we do find ways to help fund those if that is something that you will need. It would be, excuse me, sorry. It would be silly of us to say that you need to do an internship and you want to work somewhere abroad, but then we tell you to fundraise on your own, but go do it instead. It'd be silly of us to do that. So we do help fund airplane tickets and places to stay. So the limitations on where you want to go to intern abroad or within the country, even if it's outside of the US, the limitations are really your own imagination and your unwillingness to put in the hard work to find that internship. But our careers team will definitely help you find the right internship and what you're striving to work towards. Another thing you'll notice is that it says you will apply in April of your junior year on the right, and it shows you where you'll apply. And from there, you will be starting your GPS core courses. Some of you may be asked to do our summer prep program in macroeconomics and quantitative methods. If you have no background in either of those, or you feel really weak in those subjects, the summer prep program is definitely for you. We have about 85% of our students who are required to do prep. And so this past year, we've had about 180 students or so who had to do prep this year. So it is not a punishment. It's definitely something that we want to use to prepare you all for the first fall quarter, and so that you don't feel like you're lagging behind. We've never had any students say that prep was a waste of time. It is also a great way for you to meet a lot of the students that you'll be in the classes with and mingle, form study groups, do some socializing. So prep is not a bad thing to have. It is a requirement for a lot of our students. And so here, if you're a transfer student, this also shows you that you will be applying in April of your junior year, and your senior year or your third year your senior year and your third year looks exactly as the same as a freshman entry student's 4th and 5th year. So one thing to note is that some transfer students do take an additional year, which is something that you might not want to hear if you're doing the BA MIA program. It is a case by case, so we'll have to talk to you individually about that, and if this is the case for you, where you might not be able to finish everything in that first year prior to applying in spring. And so that typically is if you went to a community college maybe for a year or 2 years and you didn't do all of the lower division coursework needed to start the upper division coursework at UCSD. But it's doable. We can talk about how that'll all fit in if you're interested, particularly for those who are IS Econ. If you haven't taken the full math sequence and maybe you've been out of math for a while and you don't feel like you can start for math 10A right away, we definitely want to get you started on that as soon as possible so that you are able to apply to the BA MIA program later on. So if that's the case too, we've had some students who had to go to summer school in between your first and second year. So all in all, it takes planning, and it is an individual case-by-case scenario. So if you want to meet with me or Dr. Gilson or one of your ISP advisors, I highly recommend doing that sooner rather than later so that we can figure out how you'll get all of your coursework done. And you may have to do summer prep as well, but again, we'll work with you to see how well that fits. A common question we typically get from transfer students is that, are you able to study abroad if you're a transfer student and you want to do the BA MIA program? This gets a little bit tricky because you do have a lot of classes that you are required to take at UCSD. It's very hard to find an equivalent at a university abroad. So our advice there is that since transfer students also have the summer internship requirement, this is where the world is your oyster, and we recommend you to choose an internship abroad rather than studying abroad and taking classes. So you have options still. It's just a little bit more tighter schedule. Okay, so with GPS, we have several certificate programs. These are for tying a ribbon on any coursework that you're probably already going to take at GPS. This allows you to put on your resume that you have a certificate in quantitative methods, spatial analysis, or energy analytics. This is coursework that you will do for GPS that you'll likely count towards your GPS requirements, but with this certificate, it is the only way that you'll be able to double count coursework at GPS. So in some cases with your different career tracks, you'll have electives that can count for multiple, but we never allow any double dips for any GPS coursework except for these certificate programs. So there's a lot of students who do these because they feel that being able to put this certificate on their resume and tell an employer that they have a year of GIS and remote sensing, or they have a year of policy analysis and energy on their resume so that they can stand out and show what they can do. So these are designed for you to claim that particular specialization, and the requirements are listed here, where almost all of the coursework required for any of their certificates are courses that you'll already be taking towards your career track. So it's likely to overlap with the coursework in the certificate programs. So application information. So the BA MI application deadline is in April of every year. So you will need to go to the UCSD graduate application site, which is connect.grad.ucsd. You will need to make sure that you're applying to the correct program because all of the graduate programs are on this platform. So this is specific to BA MIAs. We have all of the regular 2-year programs in there, as well as our other BA MPP programs. So you want to make sure that you are choosing IR75 as your major code and that you'll be applying this spring 2023 if you're a junior and you're applying for this next cycle. And it will ask you for which quarter that you're applying to. This is a big difference because you will be applying for fall of 2024, not fall of 2023. We do fall of 2024 because this is the beginning of your graduate year, and this is in the graduate application portal. So because you're applying in spring of 23, you'll be starting the program in fall of 23, but since you will still be an undergraduate standing, you will not be entering graduate, like the graduates level, until fall of 2024 once you fully matriculated. So it's a little bit complicated. And if you are applying and you have any questions about this, definitely let us know, because we do get a lot of students who get confused and they think that they put down that they're starting in fall 23, which is not wrong, but it is wrong because you are technically starting in fall of 2024. And so since you're applying for the graduate year after you finish your bachelor's degree, then it will be fall of 2024. So that is something to remember when you're going into the system. There are very specific questions that direct you towards the correct application. And so we have had students every year where they applied to the wrong program, and we'd have to ask them to move their documents to the correct one. And so, yes, so that is something definitely to keep an eye out for. And so in terms of the other application requirements, there is a statement of purpose. This is a statement of purpose to really discuss your professional objectives. We like to explain it to students as a kind of intellectual biography. When did you become interested in the things that you're interested in? How has that been developed in your time at UCSD through any internships you had, through the extracurriculars you've done, any jobs you've had, and what do you want to do with it? What do you think GPS has to add to those skills and interests, and what do you want to do with that once you graduate from GPS? So it's a different kind of personal statement than what you wrote probably to get into UCSD, and is much more about what you want to be when you grow up, as it is. So what do you really want to get out of school and through this program being a BA MIA student? Along with that, there's an optional supplemental essay. It's not really an essay, but rather a set of questions that are directed towards specific topics. These are optional, you don't have to answer them, but in the case that you want to, there may be some things that you want to tell us that don't really fit in your required personal statement. For example, if you failed a class or got what you think was a really bad grade, the supplemental essay is a good way of saying any reasons of why that is what it is. Maybe you were really sick that day, or you had a loss of a family member at that time, or you're having a housing crisis or car struggles, or in the case that maybe you were taking too many classes and that class was harder than you thought and you ended up not doing well. So in other words, it's something that it's a way that you can explain to us without you can explain to us what was going on, because we will see it in your transcripts, in your resume and whatnot. So you have that opportunity to explain to us what happened. And then next we have the resume. We know most of you do not have a super long work history, so your resume, we know, is not going to be 3 to 4 pages long. But that being said, we want to see what other things you have to show for. That includes internships, jobs that you might have, any community service projects you've done or have led, any skills that you have. If you are into coding and you have C++, you can put that on there. Any languages that you speak, any travel that you've done, ongoing activities and whatnot. So your resume is something that will give us a full picture of who you are, and what are the kind of the achievements that you're proud of showing for. And then next we have transcripts. These are from UCSD. If you are a transfer student and you have all of your transfer courses listed on your academic history, we don't need your transcripts from your community college or your 4-year university that you came from, as long as everything's listed. This is a unofficial transcript, so as long as it's from UCSD, as long as everything's there for the application, that will be good. And then lastly, we need the names and email addresses for 2 recommenders. We don't require letters of recommendation, but the recommenders, they have a ability to add one should they like. But the required portion is that they have to go in and give their recommendations online. It is a set of questions where they rank you, they fill in boxes to tell us more about you. And these should be either academic references, like a teacher, professor, someone that you've worked for. In some cases, a PhD student who was a teaching assistant for one of your classes, and if they know you well, then they can be your recommenders. It shouldn't be your friend. It can't be your parent or your grandparent. As much as they love you, it shouldn't be one of them. It should be someone who can talk about your work ethic and academic skills and how you're serious about all of the things that you've told us and that you're interested in your personal statement. And then moving forward, for other admissions requirements, we do recommend that you meet with either me or Dr. Gilson sooner rather than later if you're planning on applying to the BA/MIA program. Certainly, if your plan is to apply this year, but even if you want to apply next year, I recommend that you still meet with us as soon as possible. If you are a new transfer student and you think you want to apply either this year or next year, you should absolutely meet with us so that we can figure out how to fit your coursework into a 2-year plan since you're on kind of a tighter schedule, so that we can see that you graduate. Your eligibility, if you will, to apply to this program requires what it says here, the completion of the math, the econ, and the econ management courses. INTL 101 and 102 should be completed, and there should be substantial progress in your major and GE requirements. Again, the reason there is that we want to make sure that you can graduate with your bachelor's degree. So if you have too many courses left on the undergraduate side, and then you have to take the GPS core on top of it, it becomes increasingly difficult for you to graduate with your BA on time. So we want to see how far you are along in your requirements for ISP. And then your major GPA, which is for your upper division coursework, must be a 3.0 or 3.4 or higher, sorry. And your cumulative GPA must be a 3.0 or higher. The reason for these differences, different GPA requirements, is that we know that some of you might not have started out as an ISP major. Some of you might have been physics or bio, and after a year you find that maybe this is not for me, and you came to the other side, the better side of campus, and joined ISP. So we know that maybe your physics grades or your bio grades might have pulled down your GPA a little bit. So that's why we require the 3.0. But we are definitely much more interested and concerned about your major GPA because that tells us how well you're going to do in the BA/MIA program and how well you've been doing in your ISP classes so far. And so when we review your application, Dr. Gilson and I will be working closely with GPS admissions on the review of your applications. And this is just briefly what they're looking for. Strong GPA, like I've already mentioned, as long as you're demonstrating an interest in international affairs. In other words, like what coursework have you done? Have you spent time abroad? Any internships that you wouldn't tell us about that you have been interested in? Any relevant work. And again, we know that as undergraduates, as freshman entry, you might not have too much like work experience. We know transfer students typically have a little bit more of this, particularly if you are a veteran and you know what it's like to have been abroad and to work in this fashion, or if you've had a work history and you come back to school after a while. But we know, yeah, if you have just entered UCSD as a freshman and you're a junior now and you're looking for trying to say that you've done stuff, we're just looking for a coherent idea of what you're interested in and maybe if you've had anything in the past. So we don't expect you to have spent a year abroad working in a nonprofit, or if you were an English teacher in Korea. We understand that that you won't have that experience, but we want to see kind of what evidence you are and what you're interested in. And then lastly, you want good recommendations. Don't ask anybody to give you a recommendation if you're not absolutely certain that they're going to give you a strong recommendation, because then that's not a good recommendation. So that is what we're looking for in particular. And those are the requirements. So moving on to financial aid. in your senior year or in your first year of the program, as we like to call it, you're still eligible for all of the same financial aid you get now as an undergraduate student, since you are still undergraduate standing. Once you finish that first year of the program and you matriculate into graduate standing, there is graduate financial aid that you can apply for. It's a little bit different. But besides that, students who perform well in their core classes and in their major courses often find it possible to get a TA-ship, is what we call it at GPS, in your graduate year. We have a lot of BA MIAs that tend to be TAs for INTL 101 and 102. We have a lot of BA MIAs who are TAing core classes in their second year. And we have a couple who are tutors at GPS as well. So with these TA-ships and other job opportunities as a graduate student, these help pay your tuition and fees, whether it's fully or partially. Besides those with GPS, we do offer a lot of opportunities to TA in other departments like Rady. We have some working with the writing programs at UCSC for the full year, political science, history, psychology. So there are many opportunities to help pay for your tuition and fees or get a substantial offset of your tuition and fees in your graduate year. So in some cases, you can also work as a graduate research assistant if you have a particular specialty that attracts some of the faculty that you want to work closely with. And then a lot of you might be wondering what kind of career outcomes comes from having a BA or having a master's in international affairs. So a lot of it really just depends on you. I don't think anyone has gone through GPS and say that you can't get a job doing blank. So when you're meeting with GPS Career Services and you tell them that you're interested in a particular area, our team is specialized depending on what sector you want to go to, what type of work you're interested in. And they do a individualized, like case by case for you to help get you into the field that is adjacent to what you're working on with in terms of your career track and your skill set. And they help you along the way. We have students who have gone into the FBI, CIA, working in defense, but also doing management consulting, working for the World Bank, end up in think tanks. And so again, it's really just what do you want to do and how do you focus your coursework to get you where you want to go. The limitation, like we've said a little bit earlier, in a sense, is just your own inability to think bigger. And so we definitely recommend that you put on your thinking caps, think about what you want to do and ultimately what you want to do for your career and how is GPS going to guide you into that, in that goal. And then to touch a little bit more about our GPS Career Services team, like I said, they're an excellent group of people. We are fully at full staff, so it's been great if you get to know them. This is our own GPS careers team that is separate from the Central Campus Careers Services team. And this slide tells you a great deal about what they do. They do a lot of outreach events. They have events where they even take students up to LA, San Francisco, New York, all the way to Washington, DC for those who are interested. And they do provide a lot of internship funding opportunities, like I mentioned earlier. Every year they do a number of events that put you in touch with a lot of alumni from GPS that are around the world. And that's how a lot of our GPS students do actually get their jobs, through GPS alumni. So it is very important to get to know the network that you will be joining once you're at GPS, and you get to know a lot of the alumni who come back for events and can help set up interviews for you with those who might be abroad, and they can get you start working you towards your goals early in the program. So they're an incredible resource for all of you who will be in the 5-year program. Since you will be an undergraduate student, technically in your first year, you still have access to them since you're a part of the program. And it is very difficult, we know, to get this kind of help through the main campus career services because they are much more oriented on the STEM side and the engineering side of stuff. So GPS careers really makes up the deficit for those who are in our GPS programs, and they definitely help get you to where you want to go as much as possible. And they put in as much work as you put in, So as long as you have your goals, they will help you get towards those. And then here are our social medias. I don't think I really need to tell you how to use social media. We have our main GPS UCSD Instagram account, and then we have our GPS Career Services Instagram account. You can see what kind of events that we put on and other opportunities are being offered. I don't know how many of you still use Facebook, but we still have a Facebook page. And then we also have our LinkedIn that we post a lot of the same different opportunities and workshops that we throw up. If you visit the GPS website, we do have a calendar page that gives you a good idea about what kind of talks are given at GPS, what kind of workshops are being done. We have GPS faculty that are publishing papers and books, so you can go take a look at that. So you have an idea of what the faculty is doing research on. And so that can kind of jumpstart you to think about who do you want to work with once you're in this program, and who would you want to get to know as a researcher. So I definitely recommend you spend some time scrolling through the GPS side of social media, so that you can get to know what kind of things are going on at this school prior to your acceptance into the program. And then lastly, this is where you can find both me and Nancy to make appointments. If you'd like to meet with me, I am also available during ISP drop-in hours. You can put your reason for meeting as BA/MIA, so the ISP advisors will let them know that you want to meet with me specifically, since I am the BA/MIA advisor. And then there's also the ISP appointment form that you can fill out to schedule an appointment. Or worst case scenario, you can email me directly. And then if you'd like to meet with Dr. Gilson, you can email her directly. If you do, please send her a few different days and times to schedule an appointment with her so that she can see what aligns in her calendar. She's very busy, as she has been running this program for many years now, but she is always happy to talk to prospective BA/MIA students. And so she definitely knows and understands all of the curriculum and the things that go on at GPS and ISP very well. So she is great to meet with as well. So if you can mitigate how many emails you have to send with her by just being straight to the point and wanting to schedule an appointment, schedule her some different days and times, and she will let you know what fits in her schedule as well. And then also to reach me or any ISP advisors about your undergraduate requirements, you can also reach us through the Virtual Advising Center as well. Thank you all for coming. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And I hope week 3 has been treating you well. Thank you all.